podcast you've been looking for all along. Step into the world of urban exploration with guests from around the world. Welcome to No Tracers. Hey, welcome back to the No Tracers podcast. This week on the podcast, I'm speaking with Bearded Reality from Halifax in the UK. Super excited to chat with him. He actually reached out to me on Instagram at no.tracers and told me that he listened to his friend Kyle's podcast and wanted to come on the show. And I was like, hell yeah, let's do this. Let's chat about your stories. So we're going to be talking about his crazy stories, some injuries that his friends have gotten while exploring. We're talking about social media, the importance of social media, things that it's done for him, where he would live if he could live in a place for a whole week that he's explored, his goal places, things like that. But before we get into the show, there are a few housekeeping things that I got to tell you about. First of all, I have a book out called No Tracers, an Urban Explorer's Diary. It's full of photos and stories from my explorations around the United States, and I would love for you to pick up a copy if you want to do that. Or if you would like to, support the podcast even further, you can do so via Patreon. You can support me monthly on patreon.com/justtheletterk. Over there, you will get early access to all of my content. That includes this podcast, my other podcasts, my music, YouTube videos, all kinds of cool stuff. And lastly, I need to thank our partner on this podcast, which is Liquid Death Water. And if you've never heard of Liquid Death Water, don't worry. I've got an ad coming for you in 3, 2, 1. From the streams of the Austrian Alps comes a new kind of water. A water that is sure to raise you from your grave. If you're tired of buying cases of plastic water bottles that contain carcinogens and God knows what else, or if you're trying to lower your waste footprint, Liquid Death comes in beautifully rugged aluminum cans. Murder your thirst with a can of Liquid Death. Check the link in the description and use code JustTheLetterK at checkout for 10% off your order. Liquid Death. Murder your thirst. All right, so if you want 10% off your order of Liquid Death Water, unfortunately, it doesn't ship to the UK or Europe right now, but if you're in America and you like water, you can get 10% off by hitting the link down in the description and using the code JustTheLetterK. Thank you guys for supporting me over on Liquid Death. Without further ado, Bearded Reality, please introduce yourself and what it is you do to the No Tracers audience.
Yeah, I'm Bearded Reality, so I'm a photographer, urban explorer, like to travel and do that really. So that's what I do. Known on many platforms as Bearded Reality on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all sorts really.
Awesome. So what got you into exploring in the first place? What gave you this bug?
I started I went on an explore with the missus about 10 years ago, and because she was doing some urban exploration photos and whatnot. And then about 2 years ago, I thought, I wanted something to do. I did my degree in history and I like old buildings. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go film and go check out these places. And then I've just not stopped, really.
That's awesome, man. I love that you're into the history side of things. We'll definitely jump into that more. So tell me more about that first exploration you went on.
So this was, 10 years ago. It was Bram House, an old orphanage. The place was amazing. Like I said, still a bit destroyed back then, but quite, how do you say it? Just quite untouched as well at the same time. Massive place, just beautiful. Decay as well. I love decay. Big fan of decay. So when you have natural decay, nature decay, it's quite amazing to see that. And then I still want to go back to this place as well because apparently it's a lot more destroyed now. So obviously 10 years down the line, it's cool to see how a place changes in that amount of time.
Yeah, definitely. That reminds me of I went to West Virginia and there was an abandoned elementary school and all the windows were busted out. So the natural decay was really strong in there, and there was a layer of moss on the ground. It almost looked like a football pitch. It was super cool to see, and I would love to go back there now. This has been 4 or 5 years since I went, and I just want to see what it looks like now. And it was in this really small town where the population was 100 people, so it was kind of scary, cool, but it was super cool. But yeah, I love that natural and age decay.
I do go back to like a few places just to see how much has changed from like seeing and exploring. And then a year, 2 years later, having a look, and it's crazy to see how some places can be absolutely destroyed through vandalism, decay, and like roofs falling down, and then other places that still remain eerily untouched, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't even matter what the architectural materials are. Sometimes some of them just fall apart, for many different reasons, whether it's like water leak erosion through the water getting through the ceiling, or just the foundation crumbles because of time and age. It's so fascinating to see how different buildings react differently to weather and
yes,
just natural
I went
decay.
to a care home recently, and it's like probably the most water damaged care home I've ever seen. Just literally as we were exploring it, just water streaming down all the walls, everything, and it's just literally starting to be flooded. And you're like, wow, that's just crazy to see. Like, this building's only been abandoned for probably 3 years.
Wow, that's
And
nuts.
I know what I've noticed is that a lot of the more newer modern buildings are getting destroyed a lot quicker than the older ones by far, which is crazy to think, either because they're being stripped out for copper or just general vandalism as well. The newer buildings don't tend to last in time, really.
Yeah, speaking of like copper strippers and metal strippers, what is your opinion on that kind of stuff? And even we could talk about graffiti and vandalism and that kind of thing. Like, what's your opinion on people scrapping and people doing graph in these places?
I mean, like, as far as copper steal, it's stealing regardless of how it is. It leads to like these buildings not being able to be reused, more work, more cost as well, which, I mean, that would probably put people like me out of business in a sense of like what I do. But it's also nice to see some of these buildings getting reused, repurposed, not destroyed, because eventually a lot of places just get destroyed
Yeah,
completely. They'll knock them down because it's cheaper to do that. But at the same time, like, I'm a big fan of graffiti. I've said this quite a few times in a lot of my like videos and whatnot. I love proper graffiti, like where you can see like an artist has taken time, not just like people scrolling their names on walls and things like that, where they've actually taken and added something to the place itself.
Yeah, I
Because
feel the same
it's
way.
still an art form.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. Especially if it's done properly, like I definitely have an appreciation for it. There was a sugar mill that I explored recently in Colorado, and there were like the big heat vats, and basically they spray painted all the Pac-Man ghosts and Pac-Man on these giant heat vats, and it was so cool to just see that kind of art being used. Like, they transformed the building into like an art piece, super cool.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, we've got like near where I live in Halifax, there's a whole like probably about 18 buildings. I call it a graffiti village. Everything's been tagged, all different arts, like art being done and everything. Like, it's amazing to see this, and like people going back constantly doing the work on the place.
Yeah, and for you, when did photography come into play and like the YouTube stuff? Was it immediately, or was it after like a couple explorations?
Photography straight away. I've always been taking photos. But like the YouTube stuff, I started in February. I was like to one of my friends, let's go and explore this place. We'll film it, check it out. And this was the big college where I live in my town, because it's been in the papers a lot, and like a lot of people are really unhappy with the building, the state of the building. I was like, oh, cool, let's go check it out. And I'm like, creepy explore. And then I just kept going. Really, that's about it with that, and just enjoying sharing what I do with everybody.
Yeah, and talk a little bit more about social media. What's it done for you as an explorer? Have you been able to create and connect with other explorers through it?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I said, there's loads of I know loads of explorers, loads of people that I can consider friends now. We're always constantly trading places, working together, going and explore together. So like you had Kyle on your podcast, and this is why I got in touch, because he comes on at quite a few explores with me, and then I explore. Like, I used to do it mainly solo, but I enjoy exploring with other people as well. So for me, I can pick or choose if I want to go out with people. But then I think it's a lot more fun because you get to share that experience with other people as well, and it comes across very well on film.
Yeah, and if you guys listening, if you haven't listened to the episode with Kyle, you should go check it out. It's definitely a very, very entertaining episode, and thank you for reaching out.
I enjoyed like Kyle's episode on that. I was like, and then he mentioned he was obviously just a solo explorer. I'm like, what you want about me? You come out with me quite a bit.
I love it. Little banter there. And do you have gear recommendations? Like, what kind of gear are you working with? What camera are you using? Do you have like any recommendations for people?
I'm constantly upgrading. What I've noticed now is I prefer to be more mobile. So I've kind of like started to go with light units. So I use like for my photos now, instead of taking the DSLR Canon 7D and the Mrs. 60, I use the now Galaxy S20 Ultra, which is amazing for photos. Maybe not worth the money, but like if you drop it, but it's a great camera phone as well. I don't use that to film with. I use the GoPro 9 now. Moved from GoPro 7, the Akaso, GoPro 8. The 9 is amazing when it works properly. And it brings... Well, I've been having issues. Like, a lot of my explores have been, like... Well, they're not very good at the moment just because of some firmware updates. I think now I'm recording in 5K, which seems to be coming across very smoothly and better. So I'm happy to see how that goes.
Great.
But yeah, the 9 is amazing, especially that it's on deal as well.
Yeah, I'm going to have to upgrade now. I have the 8 currently, but I've been hearing good things about the 9, so I'm probably going to upgrade myself.
Well, in terms of upgrading, I'd say they've got a new update coming like in the next week or so. So hopefully that fixes a lot of issues, because a lot of people have been reporting overheating bugs and other things. I've been fine until the recent update. And then obviously now I've switched to 5K and the footage looks amazing, and I need to go over and process everything. So it's going to be interesting to see what is going to happen with it. But the camera itself, as long as they continually work on it, it's going to be an amazing piece. You won't need to upgrade for years.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm super excited to get my hands on one of those. What other gear are you using, like backpack recommendations or shoes or anything like that?
I use generally safety shoes, just because I'm a climber, so I'll climb into everything. Other people don't climb a lot as much as me, so if there's a ladder, if there's a roof or something, off I go, and I'm looking for ways in. So I always have a good pair of shoes. Safety shoes I prefer. Obviously, they're heavier though. Bag-wise, a bag's a bag in my opinion. Doesn't matter what you use as long as you can fit everything in it. I use a big inspection torch. I'm known for that, which just lights up everything. It's amazing. Love my torch. Got a couple of spare torches as well in case I run out of light, because that's never what you want, especially if you go out at night.
Yeah.
And that's about it, really. Like I said, I downgraded to go more mobile, but that's what I'm using at the moment. I don't really use much else now, because that's all I need.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely at the point where I want to downgrade as well and bring less stuff. I used to carry like 3 camera lenses and like all this shit, and I'm just like, I'm too small to carry all this.
That was the biggest thing for me. It was just weighing me down, and like I remember I was actually on an Explorer with Kyle, and I jumped over a fence, and because my bag was so heavy, it flung me up in the air and slammed me down on my ankles and on my back, and I was like, oh my god, I could have just destroyed everything, and that's like $1,500 down the drain. That's why I was like, I need to make sure I'm not so heavy, I can escape and do whatever, make sure I'm mobile instead of having all this stuff weighing me down.
Yep, definitely. I'm right there with you. And speaking of like, that instance, do you have any urban exploration injury stories?
Me personally, not so much. I'm generally quite lucky. I'm usually looking out for other people, making sure like I'm talking people through climbs, what people are doing, whatnot, make sure that they're safe, especially if they're newer to the scene. Like, for example, I've fallen through a roof once on a theatre explore. They're dangling midway through, and like my friend, he's approaching me, and I'm like, oh, please stop coming towards me. You're going to cave us all in. It's like, oh, no, I'll get you out. No, stay there. Stay. Do not approach me. I will get myself out of this situation. Otherwise, we're both going under. But then, like, I've gone to some places where, like, and I don't like old wood. You can tell when something's rotten. But we went over these boards, and this last I was exploring with, essentially, she fell, and she was sinking. So I told her, don't panic, and I ripped her out of the situation. Got her out to safety. Really bad one was another friend of mine. We were doing an explore in Bradford, and I went over this kind of like dolly, like a trolley.
Yeah.
He didn't spot me, and he went left and just literally collapsed through the ceiling, 3-floor drop. And he's luckily landed on like a light underneath. So I'm like, all I hear is a massive scream. I come running over, assess the situation, and he's there going, oh, take my phone, take my camera. I'm like, just shut up. Like, don't move. And then, like, I'm not the biggest guy, but ripped him out of the situation. They're all covered in mud. No fatal injuries or no, like, really bad hospital injuries. But it does highlight how dangerous things can be, especially if you're not paying attention or if you're not aware of your surroundings.
Yeah, definitely. And what we do isn't the safest thing, Like,
by far, no.
We put ourselves in these risky situations for the glory of exploring and for the glory of photography. We are obsessed with this, and I think that's why we do it, despite those risks.
I think like because I'm an adult now, I take my own risks, but
Yeah.
I've noticed now I'm getting more riskier and riskier just because I'm more comfortable.
Yeah.
Whereas like for other people, I recommend staying to just like ground explores and things that are not dangerous, like overly dangerous, because at the end of the day, there's tales around here where people are falling through roofs, kids falling through roofs and whatnot, killing, like dying, just like crazy things happening like that. And it's like, well, at the end of the day, number one, it's not a kid's hobby. It's not a kid's thing. So
Mm.
kids, I mean, I know they like to copy a lot of YouTubers and whatnot, but it's not safe. And you need to know what you're doing. Make sure you're preparing yourself properly, regardless of what you think is going to happen. Be prepared to meet smackheads, crackheads, not the most savoury of people. Be prepared to get angry people, police, all sorts. It's how it works, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me about your scariest exploration.
I mean, like scariest ways. I mean, I'm quite jumpy as it is. That's why I probably prefer going off with other people now. But like, obviously, when you hear like noises in the dark and you're on your own in like a hospital or something, you're like, what's that noise? What's that noise? And then you go and investigate. I just went to Fenton recently, and I'm telling everybody there's a light up in this building, and they're like, "What do you mean? No, it's not. It's just a lamp." No, there's definitely a light up this building. We go in. Yeah, let's go and investigate. Why not? We go into the door. Big metal cladding. Okay, what's that? I told you somebody's in here. Carries on. We leave. We continue the explore, and then somebody proceeded to stalk us around the entire complex, closing windows, making noises, and we're like, this is not good at all. There's other instances, like I said, I kind of like believe more in like ghostly things now, I suppose, after doing all these things. Only a bit though, but I've been like to some creepy places where something's been following us around the entire building, messing with the pigeons, doors slamming behind us, people falling over and stuff. And you're like, okay, I won't go back here again.
Wow.
And then obviously just meeting, like we went to one property and not a good area, but it's been like overtaken with like obviously smackheads. We're going in, and then suddenly two people appear at the window, and I'm like, somebody's there. And everyone's like, nah, there's nobody there. There's somebody there above me. I can see his face at the window with a hockey stick. And they're like, oh, let's go and approach him. Let's go see. I'm like, they're not going to let us in. Oh, can we come in? No. All right. Like, so, like obviously, I'm quite respectful when I explore. So if somebody tells you to go, you just leave. No point in causing hassle. There's plenty of places to explore.
Exactly. And what about your favorite exploration to date?
I've done so many. Like I've literally done so many now. Like I do personally like a lot of the old mansions. Farmhouses I'm in love with at the moment. The feel of farmhouses and the history behind them is quite crazy. Plus, a lot of them are quite untouched, considering how remote they are as well. I think that's something that saves a lot of these properties. I do like the mills as well. I've done a lot of mills because I come from a textile town. So it's interesting to do a lot of like the historical places in my town because of what like it's known for.
Definitely.
I've just gone to the Duke of Lancaster. I'm working my way on to doing this explore, which is a massive abandoned boat, if you don't know that. Which was, I think it was like not scuppered, but like beached in 1956 or something. And then they're on about turning it into like a live zombie live escape place or something, a fun ship.
Oh, wow.
But the place is absolutely amazing. So I'm working on my way on there. It's got on-site security. It's got all sorts, and I figured out how I'm going to climb on board and do all this, and knowing that I'm going to get caught, but the explore's going to be worth it.
For sure. I love that you're going to do it despite that. So, since you're a history buff, do you have a couple places with your favorite history or some like crazy history that you can share?
I mean, so there's got the Storth's Hall Asylum, which unfortunately they knocked down before I could explore it properly. There's the one main infirmary building still there with a big bell tower. They've just started converting it. Lots of tales of like ghostly experiences, all sorts around there. And I recently discovered two houses on the site there as well, which nobody really knew about, or from the area they knew about. But I went and did those, and I got into the papers for those. But like the whole place, they're like 30, 40 years old. And just like I went into one bit and I can hear somebody upstairs. It's been like turned into like a proper sesh then. And you're like, what? And then like obviously Nazi symbols everywhere and all this weird graffiti and old papers. We went to recently this farmhouse. It's called the Widow Soldier's Farmhouse. So like all the stuff when I went had been pretty much removed. Like all the so for some reason, a lot of people taking like the photos of like the families and stuff like that, which I don't get why.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because it really adds to a place.
Yeah.
But apparently, it's this this soldier died and left his widow in this property. But when we went there, we noticed, obviously, we found a lot of the postcards, a lot of things like that. And we're like, oh, well, so we can read the postcards, see what's going on. And then we found the big scythe, the thing that used to cut the field. And we're like, oh, there we go. And then behind the wall, we found these stairs that had been like, basically the wall had been smashed, and these stairs leading down to this creepy basement with a pitchfork and a shoe. And then all these old papers leading to killings and other things, and we're like, what's going on here? This is suddenly changed. Whoa. We have something above us, and we're like, oh, here we go. This is not good. And there's only me and another person, and we're like, okay, here we go. Really, really weird places, but definitely enjoyable. But one thing I'm liking about like Explore, usually I find the history, unless I know local history stories about them afterwards, and I'll research a place, add something to the titles of things. Mm-hmm. But it's really cool to see like other people's explores on these places and see how places have changed over time.
Oh, definitely. There was in Canada, I explored this place called Century Manor, and it was basically impossible to get into. But recently somebody like broke the door in or, found a way in. And so I finally got to see what it looks like inside, and it was completely pitch black. It's an old asylum and super creepy. And I was like, I definitely don't want to go in there. Like, I'm glad I stayed outside. Like, so creepy.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, I'm always waiting for places to open up, or I'm looking. Like, obviously, people breaking in, and I don't like. That's not good. You shouldn't do that anyway. But when it does, I will go and take my chance, or I'm looking for ways in myself.
Yeah, for sure.
But there's some places with such weird backstories, especially like I think in the UK. UK is quite unique in a way because each area has its own thing. So like I said, my place is mills and textiles. The further up north you go, you got more mines. Further down south you go, it's more docks and like those kind of explores. So there's like these unique things that you can basically go to an area and then obviously see differences between your area and other places in the country.
That's awesome. I love that. Over here in America, it's just we have random shit scattered all over the place. So it's kind of cool.
You guys have got some like really amazing locations.
Oh, for sure. 100%. I mean, we've got theme parks, like water parks.
Oh, our theme park's going now. We had a load of theme parks, and then you got Camelot, which I did. And they've just started destroying that now with one famous one. We're like,
I love doing the theme parks. My thing is like my favorites are theme parks, asylums, and I love old churches. Those are my favorites.
Yeah, the churches are quite unique. I like those.
Yeah, I think over in the UK and Europe, you guys have a lot more unique churches, like older churches as well, just because they've been around longer and the architecture is totally different. So like I hope to, my band Matriarchs, we just got booked for a show in Belgium. So whenever we head over there, I'm going to try to explore some stuff. Though. Yeah.
Like, I went to Berlin, I was going to do a bunch of explores, and I didn't end up doing it because I got lost in, like, this ghetto somewhere. But I'm planning to do Germany, definitely doing Chernobyl, hopefully this year. I definitely want to hit France as well and a few other places because, like I said, each country has their own things. One of my top places that I do want to do though is Hungary, like Transylvania, and do all the castles. I'm a sucker for castles, and the villages, the abandoned villages. So that's what I'm definitely looking forward to.
Yeah, nice. I was supposed to go to Turkey last month, and unfortunately, the client ended up like with COVID, so it got canceled. But there's like a whole town there that it was like a millionaire's town, and like all the houses look the same, and they basically built this whole town of properties, and then like everybody just pulled out last minute for whatever reason, like
I've heard about these kind of places.
Yeah, it's so weird,
fucking crazy.
So crazy.
There's like over in America though, like there's this place I read about this place. This guy basically bought a town or something like that, and he's been finding bodies and stuff.
What?
But it's like, do you not know about this? Like, he's been going through the mines and like chatting these mines and all sorts of weird things. You definitely should look into that though, because if you can get like a permission visit off that, because it's one person that lives in this whole town, which he's building up, and he's just chatting everything. I think he was looking for gold or something. I can't remember what the story was, but it's crazy though. So stuff like that is something that I'd love to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Like one day I hope to open a urban exploration museum. I think that would be
Oh
super
yeah.
cool, and just have all these artifacts from these different places and like plaques with like where they came from and the story behind them. That's a huge goal of mine down the line. Maybe in like 5 years I'll open one of those up. But so you talked about your goal places. You talked about Chernobyl. Are you planning on going the public route, or are you trying to go like the private route through the forest and like all that stuff?
I'll probably my idea is probably to do like an extreme kind of tour thing, just because for the first go, the people that go there, they know what they're talking about. Safety. It's always about safety because I
Yeah,
hope to come back for my explores. That's the main
true.
thing. So get a couple of people to go with me. Go for like 5 days. So it's like one of the proper things. Go off the route as well. Hide from the military. That kind of thing. And go off to the places that you don't generally see, as well as the places that you do. Plus, it's like a little, I think it's like a hotel or motel there as well, where you can charge your gear and get sorted.
Yeah.
So that would be my plan, to do it that way. A little bit expensive, but definitely worth it. Especially because like the thing about the guides there, if you get the right ones, they are explorers themselves. That's what they do. That's how they've made a business out of it.
Hmm.
So you've got somebody that can talk you through the area, give you the equipment, and take you to the places that you really want to see, instead of just being lost in the forest for a couple of days
Yeah, for
in
sure.
the middle of nowhere. Because you got to remember, like Pripyat itself and like Chernobyl, the area is massive. It's not just
Right.
a simple kind of, oh, here's an abandoned village with like 100 locations. It's just continuous. And then if you bump into the military somewhere and you don't know what you're saying, you can't speak the language for one thing. It's that kind of thing. So I think that's the wiser route to do it.
Yeah.
Second time, if I go though, that's when I'd go by myself or with someone else. I wouldn't take a guide by
Yeah,
far.
love it. Love it. Love it. If you could live in one place you've explored for a week, which one would it be?
Um, I don't know. I honestly don't. I've been to so many places. Like it's ridiculous. Where would I live? Um, I do know actually. My favorite location is Dalton Grange. It's basically it's in my town. It's this old wedding venue. I went last year, and we couldn't get in at the time. Because this is like notoriously, I think Kyle mentioned this one about basically we got in finally after a year and a half of me checking the area out. We got in through the roof. We were exploring the area. We had about 5 minutes in the location, and then down the stairs, we just hear somebody shouting and then trying to bust through the door.
Oh
So I
yeah.
got that on video. Yeah, we were like, right, we got to get out, running through the darkness, hiding in the woods. A notorious place to get into because of basically it's owned by a chemical plant, Syngenta. That's the company. And they wanted to knock it down, turn it into a car park. Big local uproar about it.
Mm.
But it's actually like a lovely building, like a fantastic building. So that's a place that I would like. If they ever just said, here's the keys, off you go," I would spend my life doing that place up.
Love it.
History wise, again, I don't even really know. I'd pick a castle somewhere. Not that I've explored yet, but I'd definitely go and pick a castle, go
Yeah,
chat everything, I think.
that would be awesome. And what's the farthest that you've traveled to explore something?
I went and did Greece and
Ooh.
Corfu, so I did the abandoned village there. I think Kyle was mentioning that,
Mm.
which was really good. I really enjoyed that because I love like just being like left in a location just that open where you can just look around and check everything out.
For sure.
I went and did the old fortress there as well. But like I said, I'm planning to travel quite far because I think like at the start of last year I was planning on going to China to go do some work there, and then that didn't obviously fell through because
Mm.
of COVID and things.
Right.
So that was the plan back then because I was looking for work to do that. But that would have been amazing because I love Asian history, and like the locations there are second to none. Especially like some like if you go into like a forest somewhere and you see like just the state of the buildings, most of them are untouched. It's crazy.
Wow. That sounds awesome.
Definitely Fukushima. That's definitely on my plan.
Hmm.
I've been talking about this for quite a while, only because unlike obviously it's newer than Chernobyl, more dangerous, more radioactive, which is fun, but it's definitely a different kind of feel, different kind of explore. Number one, because you know that everybody just literally up and left, and that's it.
Hmm.
Left their lives as they are, and I think that's something that hits a different note to just general explore, like explores where somebody's died, or like what I mean, like these people like Chernobyl had to just be told to get out, get your stuff, get out, and off you go and just left their lives, which is quite amazing.
Yeah, it is very, very interesting, those kind of situations, and they literally leave everything behind, and most of that stuff is still just sitting there, just
Food on the
collecting
plates.
dust.
It's that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and it's like,
yeah.
wow.
It's so crazy. And then my last question for you is, what is something you know now that you wish you knew when you started exploring?
I don't know. I've always been pretty safe, and like to not be so jumpy, to remain calm. I think that transfers over in my footage now. That I still get a bit jumpy and whatnot, but like assess your situation a bit more. Don't just up and run. Always be more like aware. So I tend to like I'll usually fall over while doing the most stupid mundane thing, but then I'm very hyper alert when I'm climbing something or doing something. But like just be confident in what you're doing. Make friends for one thing. It's always good to have your back, have someone have your back. But that's it really, and it's not all about like some people like in the urban community, especially in the UK, can be a bit funny. But it's at the end of the day, it's about exploring, enjoying your surroundings, the locations, your love of exploring. So don't care about people kicking off with you. If you do YouTube, you do YouTube. You take photos, you take photos. It is what it is. It's like you got to have the passion to do that in the first place. If that's something that you enjoy,
Yeah.
don't care what other people think. It's what you think about what you do in the end of the day.
Yeah, don't let the assholes on Facebook groups get to you.
Oh yeah, definitely. But like that's the point though. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people like will kick off with people over stupid things, and it's
Right.
like I like to encourage other people to explore. If like for example in my videos, I usually name a location or put like the general info. But when somebody asks me, "Oh, where's this?" I'm like, "Well, all the relevant information is there. Please don't ask me unless you know me properly."
Yeah.
Don't just ask for opinion. Do a little bit of research. Have a little look, because that's what it's about. You'll find, like I've found, like we've gone to like Wales recently, all these places that we planned to go, and you couldn't get into quite a few of them. But then we've got our eyes open on the road, and we found some of these amazing locations that are just we weren't even looking at. And you're like, wow, this is actually better than what we thought. So always have your eyes open. Always just be aware of what you see, and just be careful. That's the main thing.
Cool. And one more time for people, if they want to follow your journey, where can they find you online?
Like I said, Bearded Reality. I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, probably other platforms. You'll if you search Bearded Reality, that's me. But yeah, that's what I'm on basically.
All right, guys, that was my podcast with Bearded Reality. Thank you so much for reaching out to me on Instagram and letting me know that you had some interest in coming on the podcast. I love when people reach out. That's literally my favorite part of this podcast is having people reach out and say, "Yo, I got some stories I want to share on your podcast." That's awesome. So if you want to come on the podcast, hit me up at no.tracers on Instagram. I would love to get you on the show. And if you liked this episode of No Tracers, please do me a favor and leave a rating and feedback, and then take a screenshot of it and send it to me at no.tracers on Instagram, and I will actually send you a signed photo print of an abandoned place that I have explored as a way of saying thank you. All right, guys, I will talk to you again next week for another episode of the No Tracers podcast. My name is K, just the letter K. Stay strong, keep enduring, go out, go explore something, and remember, leave no trace.